I always believed my marriage in America rested on solid ground. For 8 years, I lived with Daniel and our daughter Emma in a soft gray 3-bedroom house on Willow Creek Lane in Denver. The house was worth about $480,000, and I had thought every room held a memory we both helped build. I told myself that our life was stable and safe. In truth, I was living on ground that was already cracking long before I noticed the first line. That morning began like any quiet morning in our kitchen. Sunlight flowed through the window above the sink and turned the marble counter a warm gold. Daniel sat at the table with his coffee untouched beside him as he scrolled through his phone. Emma sat across from him with her cereal bowl in front of her. She always stirred it until the flakes turned soggy. I had no idea that a single careless sentence from her small voice would set fire to the world I trusted. Emma looked up at me with her gap-toothed smile and said something that made my spoon stop halfway to my mouth. She said that after Daniel dropped me off at my office near Central Park Avenue, he always parked the car and talked to a lady. She said he smiled at her a lot. She said it with the same innocence she used when she talked about a new cartoon or her favorite color. My heartbeat thumped so hard that I felt it in my neck. I tried not to react. I tried to keep my breathing even. Daniel lifted his eyes for a moment, his expression flat, then returned to his phone as if nothing mattered. I asked Emma gently what she meant, and before she could add more, Daniel stepped in. He said they were work calls, nothing more. He said it in a calm voice, but I saw the slight twitch in his jaw. Daniel never twitched unless he was lying. Emma shrugged, already losing interest. She grabbed a napkin and wiped her chin. She was too young to understand the weight of what she had shared. But the words landed inside me like a quiet explosion. A lady, smiling, talking to him after he dropped me off. I tried to eat my breakfast, but every bite tasted like sand. At work, I could not focus. Each email looked blurry. Each phone call felt distant. I kept hearing Emma's voice again and again. I felt a slow heaviness settle in my stomach. I remembered all the times Daniel came home late and said he had traffic delays. I remembered the month he changed his phone password and laughed when I asked about it. I remembered when he hid our credit card debt years earlier. I forgave him then, but the memory had never faded. It now rose again like smoke from a fire I did not know was still burning. When I got home that evening, I tried to act normal. I cooked pasta and garlic bread. I helped Emma with her homework. Daniel told us about his busy day in a calm and steady tone. He did not mention any lady. He did not mention Boulder or Ridgeview Heights. He did not mention anything that could have tied him to the uneasy knot twisting inside my chest. After Emma went to bed and the house became quiet, I opened the family laptop. Daniel often forgot to log out, so I checked his browser history. It was empty, completely wiped. He had never cleared it before. That was the second clue. I opened our bank app next. 2 charges jumped out immediately. One was for a flower shop in Boulder, $48. The other was for a small hotel in Ridgeview Heights near Colorado Springs, $91. The amounts were small, but the locations were enough to jolt something awake inside me. I sat in the dim light of the living room and stared at the laptop screen. A flower shop, a hotel, a lady, a smile. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to believe that I was overthinking, but too many small truths were stacking up into something unavoidable. When I went to bed that night, I lay beside Daniel quietly. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight outside. I could hear his steady breathing. I wondered how someone could sleep so peacefully while cracks formed beneath our marriage. I listened to the sound of his calm breath and felt a storm building inside me. Every thought spun with a new intensity. The face of the unknown woman in Boulder. The hotel room is under his name. The secrets sit just under the surface. My mind refused to rest. I kept asking myself why a man would clear his browsing history. Why would he buy flowers in a city he had no reason to visit? Why would he book a hotel room in a small town far from work? Why did he smile so much at a woman Emma had noticed? I stared at the ceiling in the darkness and felt my life shift into something uncertain. The next morning, nothing looked the same to me, even though everything appeared normal. The The kitchen had the same warm light. Emma sat in the same chair. Daniel drank the same black coffee. Yet the air between us no longer felt familiar. I carried a new suspicion inside me, heavy like a hidden stone I could not put down. I did not confront him. I was not ready. I needed to be sure. I needed to protect Emma. I needed to understand what kind of life I had been living without realizing it. That morning, I walked out of the house knowing that something was terribly wrong and that I had to uncover the truth piece by piece. The first seed of doubt had come from the mouth of my child, and it had already planted itself deep inside my heart. It was small, but it was strong, and it was growing fast.
I did not know then how far its roots would reach.
I only knew that my life would never be the same again. The morning after Emma's innocent confession, I woke with a sharp sense of purpose. The doubt that had taken root inside me had grown into a steady fire. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed to protect my child and myself before the truth swallowed me whole. As I stood in the bathroom brushing my hair, I saw my face in the mirror and hardly recognized myself. There was fear in my eyes, but beneath it, something stronger had started to rise. Determination. Before leaving for work, I slipped a small tracker into Daniel's car. I had bought it online the night before for $75. It was small enough to hide inside a pocket near the trunk. I knew many women might hesitate to take such a step, but something inside me told me this was the first necessary move in uncovering the true shape of my life. Trust had been broken. This was now about truth and safety. At lunch, I drove to downtown Denver and walked into a law office on Magnolia Street. The lawyer, Alicia Hart, met me in her glass-walled office. She had kind eyes but a sharp mind, and she spoke in a calm tone that steadied my shaking nerves. I told her only part of what I suspected because I needed to move slowly. She listened carefully, her pen tapping lightly on her notepad. When I finished, she told me to gather evidence quietly and to avoid confronting Daniel yet. She said if I felt unsafe or overwhelmed, I should hire a private investigator to handle the deeper digging. I took her advice as if it were a lifeline. That afternoon, I met with a private investigator named Mark Stevens. He was a former police detective who now worked independently. His small office in Aurora smelled faintly of old files and coffee. He charged $200 an hour, but I did not hesitate. I gave him the suspicious addresses from our bank statements and the details of Daniel's changed routines. Mark nodded slowly, taking notes in his steady handwriting. He promised he would begin the investigation right away. That evening at home, I moved through the house with quiet steps. Daniel watched television downstairs while Emma colored in her notebook. I climbed the stairs to our home office and opened drawers I had never paid attention to. One held old tax papers. Another held scattered receipts. But most were empty or neatly arranged, which felt unusual because Daniel was never organized. It felt as if the drawers had been cleaned recently. Later that night, after Daniel went to bed, I searched the attic. I found dusty boxes, labeled Christmas, and old clothes. Nothing unusual. But when I returned to our bedroom, my attention fell on a small locked cabinet Daniel had always dismissed as unimportant. I never questioned it before. Now I needed to know what was inside. I searched the room for the key. I checked behind picture frames, inside suit pockets, and finally under Daniel's desk. There, taped to the underside, was a small key covered in dust. My heart pounded as I inserted it into the lock. The door opened with a faint click. Inside were documents Daniel had hidden for years. The first paper I saw was a mortgage deed for a house in Ridgeview Heights, a quiet town near Colorado Springs. The house was a small white two-story property worth around $390,000. The name on the deed stopped my breath. It was not Daniel's name. It was a name I had never seen written on official documents. The owner listed was James Porter, but the signature on the bottom was Daniel's handwriting. I knew that writing was better than my own. My husband had built a second identity. I searched deeper inside the cabinet. Insurance papers were tucked behind the mortgage. Under the name James Porter, he had listed a woman named Lily Grant as a beneficiary. My pulse hammered so hard I felt dizzy. I had never heard that name until that very morning when Mark sent me a short message saying he had found a woman who met Daniel often in Boulder. I did not want to believe the two details were connected, but every instinct in my body told me they were. When I checked the tracker later that evening, it showed Daniel had driven toward Ridgeview Heights. I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance, my hands trembling against the steering wheel. The sun had set by the time I reached the quiet neighborhood where the tracker stopped. I parked far enough not to be seen and watched the house. Daniel's car was already there. Within minutes, the front door opened. A young woman stepped onto the porch. She had long blonde hair and soft features. She placed her hand gently on her stomach, and I realized with a crushing weight that she was pregnant. I felt the world tilt around me. I could not breathe. I sat perfectly still as Daniel walked out of the house behind her. He touched her shoulder. He kissed her forehead. He whispered something into her ear, and she smiled at him. It was the most casual tenderness, and it struck me like a knife. I knew then that the woman was not a random stranger. She was part of the life he had built behind my back. My phone buzzed. Mark sent a message with a photo attached. It was a marriage certificate. Daniel, under the name James Porter, had married Lily Grant in a quiet courthouse ceremony. It was illegal. It was deliberate. And it was happening while I still wore my wedding ring. A cold wave moved through my body. Not just pain. Not just betrayal. Something sharper. Something that cleared the fog of confusion and left behind pure clarity. My marriage was already broken. My trust was gone. My only mission now was to protect Emma, protect myself, and uncover every secret Daniel had buried. I sat in my car for a long time after the lights inside that house went dark. Tears finally came, slow and heavy. But even through the tears, I felt my strength rising. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. There was no turning back. The storm had begun, and I was done pretending everything was fine. The days that followed felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. Every step cut me. Every new truth drew blood. But each painful discovery also gave me a strange kind of strength, like my body was learning how to stand again after years of leaning on a man who never truly supported me. I was living inside a storm, yet I felt myself growing steadier with every passing day. The fear I once had was turning into clear focus. I spent long hours in Alicia Hart's office, the same glass-walled space on Magnolia Street where she first listened to my suspicions. Now she was listening to facts, not guesses. We spread all the documents across her desk. The hidden mortgage papers from Ridgeview Heights. The credit card statements from Boulder. The secret insurance files. The forged signatures. The marriage certificate shows the illegal union between Daniel, under his false name, and Lily Grant. There were also photographs taken by Mark, showing Daniel entering and leaving the Ridgeview Heights house. Alicia studied everything with a calm intensity that made me feel protected. She told me that bigamy and financial fraud were serious crimes in America. She explained the legal path step by step, making sure I understood how my evidence would speak louder than any emotion. I held on to her advice as tightly as I held Emma's hand every night when I tucked her into bed. I knew that the truth would carry me through the coming battle, but I had to remain steady and silent until the time was right. One of the first things Alicia told me to do was protect myself financially. I logged into our joint savings account, which held $126,000. My hands shook as I moved every cent into a protected account under my name only. Then I accessed Emma's college fund, which had $30,000. I froze it. Legally, Daniel still had his name on both accounts, but with Alicia's guidance, I ensured he could not drain them out of anger or fear. I knew Daniel well enough to understand that once the truth surfaced, he would lash out. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak as I locked down our finances. It felt like the final admission to myself that my marriage was no longer a marriage. Love had been replaced by secrecy. Partnership had been replaced by betrayal. The life I thought I shared with Daniel was nothing but a carefully crafted illusion he built to hide his second world. During this time, Mark continued his investigation. He gathered more proof from the Ridgeview Heights neighborhood. He spoke to neighbors who remembered seeing Daniel visit often. He took photos of the woman living there. He even visited the courthouse where the fake marriage took place and obtained certified copies of the documents. He worked quickly, understanding that the truth needed to be assembled before Daniel sensed what was coming. 3 days before I planned to file the divorce papers, something happened that I never saw coming. I was sitting at my dining room table late at night, sorting through more evidence, when my phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number. It began with my name, written in a shaky tone that I could almost hear. It was from Lily. She said she wanted to meet. She said she had learned the truth only after Mark spoke to her. She said Daniel had told her he was divorced and had no children. She said he promised her a peaceful future with their baby. She wrote that her heart felt like it was breaking, and she did not know who else to turn to. Her message shook me. The next morning, we met at a small cafe in downtown Denver. It was a quiet place with soft brown chairs and low lighting. I found her sitting in a corner booth with her hands resting on her swollen stomach. She was in her 8th month of pregnancy. The moment she looked up and saw me, tears began streaming down her cheeks. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers, and I felt something inside me soften. She kept apologizing. She kept saying she never wanted to hurt Emma She explained that Daniel had told her he was a man starting fresh after a painful divorce. He showed her documents that supported his stories. He took her to nice dinners. He told her he wanted to be a father to her child. He convinced her that her baby would grow up in a safe and stable home. She had believed him the way I once did. As we talked, I realized she was not an enemy. She was another casualty of Daniel's lies. She was living inside the same illusion I had lived in for years, only her illusion was newer and more fragile. She told me she felt ashamed and frightened. She did not know how to raise a child alone. She did not know how to face a future filled with the mess Daniel created. Her voice cracked when she said she felt stupid for trusting him, and I reached across the table to hold her hand. We spent 2 hours sharing details. She told me about the first time Daniel introduced himself as James Porter. She told me about the nights he said he had long work shifts. She told me how he bought baby clothes and painted the nursery in the Ridgeview Heights house. She even told me about the names he had suggested for the baby. Every word she said made my heart ache. But I also felt a strange comfort in knowing that we were no longer alone in this fight. We were 2 women bound by the same betrayal, standing on opposite sides of a lie that had stretched far beyond what either of us could imagine. By the end of our meeting, she agreed to testify in court. She said she wanted to protect her child and ensure Daniel could never do this to another woman again. She wanted justice. She wanted safety. She wanted the truth to be known. As I walked back to my car, I felt something inside me shift. The fear that once overwhelmed me was slowly turning into a powerful resolve. I knew the storm was coming. I knew the courtroom fight would be fierce. But now, for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the steady rise of strength and justice preparing itself inside me. I was no longer afraid of the truth. I was ready for it. The courtroom in Denver County felt colder than I expected. The walls were painted a dull cream color, and the wooden benches had the kind of stiffness that made your back ache within minutes. Yet I walked inside with a straight spine and a clear heart. Alicia stood beside me, carrying 2 neat folders of evidence. She greeted me with a quiet smile, the kind of smile that said she was ready for the battle ahead. Behind us, Lily walked slowly, her hand resting on her pregnant stomach. Her face looked pale but determined. Daniel sat across the room, avoiding my eyes, his cheeks drained of all their usual confidence. When the judge entered, the room settled into silence. Alicia stepped forward with calm steps, placing the evidence on the judge's desk. She spoke clearly, describing each document in the order that would expose the entire web of deception. She began with the second identity papers. Then she moved to the hidden mortgage for the Ridgeview Heights house. Next came the credit card statements showing his secret spending in Boulder. She showed copies of the insurance documents naming Lily as a beneficiary under a false identity. Finally, she placed the illegal marriage certificate on the desk, her voice steady and strong. With each piece of evidence, the judge's eyebrows lifted slightly. He leaned forward, studying the documents with growing concern. The courtroom grew heavy with quiet tension. Daniel attempted to shift in his seat several times, but his voice never rose. He remained silent as Alicia spoke, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The truth was too large to run from now. When my turn came to speak, I told the judge about Emma's small discovery, the one innocent moment that had exposed everything. I described how I followed the tracker to the Ridgeview Heights house and witnessed Daniel with Lily. I explained how he had crafted two lives, one built on lies, the other built on stolen trust. Every word felt heavy, but each truth I released made my shoulders lighter. Lily spoke next. Her voice shook at first, but she steadied herself with a long breath. She explained how Daniel had promised her a future, how he told her he was divorced, and how he showed her documents to support those lies. She told the judge that she never meant harm to anyone. She only wanted a safe home for her baby. When she finished speaking, the courtroom felt painfully quiet. After hours of reviewing the documents and listening to us, the judge delivered his decision. His voice was firm and clear. He said that Daniel had committed bigamy, acted with intentional deception, and placed both families in emotional and financial danger. His words cut through the room like a final verdict on a man who believed he could live unseen behind a wall of lies. Daniel lost everything in one hearing. The judge awarded me full custody of Emma without hesitation. He said the stability of her life depended on the presence of a responsible and truthful parent. I kept the house on Willow Creek Lane. I kept all our savings. The judge ordered Daniel to pay child support for Emma, and he also ruled that he must provide support for Lily's child once he is born. The two families he tore apart would now be tied together through the financial responsibilities he tried to escape. Not long after the ruling, Daniel's employer learned about the case. The insurance company did not tolerate fraud of any kind. They dismissed him immediately. News spread through the office, and before the day ended, Daniel's reputation in his professional circle collapsed. The man who once walked around with the easy confidence of someone living two comfortable lives now found himself marked by his own decisions. He moved into a small rented apartment on the outskirts of Denver. He stopped attending family events. He avoided public places. His phone became silent most days. When he did reach out, it was only through short messages asking about child support dates. He no longer held the power he once abused. Meanwhile, Lily began rebuilding her life in Colorado Springs. She found a small apartment near a community center and joined a support group for single mothers. In early spring, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Andrew. When I visited her a month later, she held him with such gentle pride that tears filled my eyes. She told me she wanted him to grow up knowing the truth, but also knowing that two women protected him before he was ever born. Her strength surprised me. Her hope gave me comfort. As for me, life slowly returned to calm. Emma and I filled our home with new routines. She helped me repaint the living room a soft cream color. We added warm lamps near the sofas and put fresh flowers on the windowsills. Every corner of the house felt familiar again, but it also felt renewed. It was finally mine. No lies were hiding in the walls anymore. I found a part-time job at a real estate office near downtown Denver. It gave me enough time to take care of Emma while still rebuilding my financial footing. My coworkers welcomed me with kindness, and the peaceful rhythm of my new schedule helped heal the cracks inside my heart. Emma laughed more often. She drew pictures of our family with bright crayons. She began sleeping through the night again. I knew she felt the change even without knowing the full story. Sometimes at night, when the house was quiet, I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who trusted Daniel without question. The woman who believed her marriage was safe. The woman who ignored the small alarms that now seem so obvious. I realized that I had grown stronger than I ever imagined. I learned how to move from shock to strategy. I learned how to protect myself with calm decisions. I learned that truth, even when painful, builds a stronger foundation than any lie ever could. I ended a life built on deceit. I protected my child. I helped protect another. I faced the storm and stepped out of it with my dignity, my home, and my future intact. This is how I claimed my peace. This is how I rebuilt my world.